I had a chance to speak with U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Matthew Graves. He discussed why the crime bill is needed for the district, but also goes into what is missing from the bill. Well, Mr. Graves, talk a little bit, your thoughts on the secure D.C. crime bill. What sticks out? What stands out?
Just an incredibly important package, and there's so many good things in there, it's hard to highlight a couple. But I would say what it does at a high level is it fixes a lot of the gaps that we're seeing in the D.C. criminal justice system that are causing outcomes that we and our fellow community members don't want. Increasing penalties where penalties needed to be increased for the most serious offenses, dealing with the epidemic we're seeing of the spread of illegal firearms and having more penalties and more consequences around it, and also helping with people being detained pending trial after their arrest, so we see fewer instances, hopefully, of people committing offenses again after they've already been arrested and while they're awaiting trial.
Are there some parts of the crime bill that maybe you'd like to either see strengthened or removed that maybe put your office still at a disadvantage?
So I think there are some things that came out of the bill over the time that we very much would have liked to see be in the final package. One of those just recently came out, and that had to do with the collection of DNA from individuals arrested for felony offenses at the time of their arrest, as opposed to waiting for conviction. The reason this is so important is that the FBI maintains a database of unsolved cases where there's been DNA collected from. And so if the DNA is collected at arrest, you can load a suspect's profile in there and you can get a match on some incredibly serious, unclosed violent crimes.
I mean, just talk about the importance of DNA and how it helps your office and just overall how it helps put people behind bars.
Just incredibly important, and DNA technology has improved so much over the last 20 years. I was a career prosecutor when I was doing prosecutions for violent crimes 15 years ago. The likelihood of getting a DNA hit was much smaller. Now, because of how much the science has proved, you are both likely to get DNA from crime scenes and likely to be able to get a result, either saying it is the person or it is not the person, because we also want to know if there's evidence that excludes someone, because the last thing anyone wants is a false conviction.
Are there any parts of this crime bill that you think could help drive crime down in the district?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different parts of the bill that would be very helpful. First of all, the bill continues the legislation passed over the summer that expands pretrial detention. If dangerous individuals, people that we argue to a court present a danger to the community and should be held pending their trial, are not back out in community, by definition they can't commit new crimes. I think that having more penalties for illegal firearms possessions will lead to people both being detained pre-trial and hopefully getting longer sentences. That's a whole period where they are out of community and not in community committing more crimes. And then, of course, DNA would be the biggest thing, because that's directly related to closing very violent, serious crimes and taking those people out of community.
You know, you continue to talk about the importance of DNA testing. This is 2024. It's just so much different than when your career started.
Yes.
Is the world and DNA evidence just totally different now from a technology standpoint?
The technology of DNA is very different. One of the things that frustrated getting results with the technology that existed 15 years ago is just with some type of key evidence that's at a crime scene, like a firearm, it might be handled by multiple people if it's passed around a crew of individuals. The fact that multiple people touched it and their DNA would mix on the firearm made it so that 15 years ago, they effectively, the technology just had to throw up its hands and say, I can't do anything with this. We are now to a place where they can kind of pull apart the contributors, and even when multiple people have touched, they can say there's a high likelihood that the person that's charged is one of the 2, 3, or 4 people that handled this item.
Getting back to the crime bill, if you could add more to it, what would you add?
If I could add more to it, and this is another provision that dropped out that I would like to continue to have a conversation about, there was a provision that was greatly misunderstood that had to do with those instances where we're not going to detain individuals prior to trial who have been charged with serious gun offenses, who are nevertheless let back out into the community, often over our objection. What are we going to do with those people? And the fact is, in our current environment, many of those people are being released back out into community with little or no supervision. An idea that was in the bill at the time that we fully support, that was greatly, I think, misunderstood in some of the public discussion, was that a condition of release should be for people that are charged with serious weapons offenses, that when they are out in public, if the police come up to them and want to confirm they're doing what they were ordered to do when they were released, not carry another illegal firearm, that they're in fact not carrying an illegal firearm.
I'm sure you're aware, at least in the first 2 months of the new year, most violent crimes are down in the district. Your thoughts?
So I think this is the continuation of a trend line we're seeing since violent crime peaked in the summer. Unfortunately, last year, for many of our most serious violent crimes, the numbers were so bad in the spring and summer that what we were seeing was the numbers over the year became slightly less bad. But what is actually happening behind the scenes there is the instances of shootings, robberies, carjackings are all starting to fall. You just couldn't see it because of where the numbers were last year. But with the reset, what we're seeing is this continuance. So it's 2 months of data. Nobody wants to draw any conclusions on 2 months of data. But what I'm saying is this is a trend that really started last summer, where we started to see a decrease in these violent crimes, and it's continued through. I think some of that is the results of the law enforcement activity that we had in place throughout last year, taking dangerous individuals off the street, keeping them detained, and the emergency legislation that was passed last summer we think was also incredibly helpful.
All right, Matthew Graves, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.